I'll start by saying this. I never planned on telling anyone this story, but I feel like I might lose my shit if I don't share this. I've managed to keep it a secret for a long time, kept it buried deep within the recesses of my mind until now. I was a 20-year-old female, but this happened around the time I was 17, so it's been 3 years or so. I'm a lesbian. I never really had a problem with my sexuality. In fact, I had a girlfriend at the time and would spend quite a great deal of time with her at her house. We had been together for about a year at the time and had a dog that was ours. It was as if the dog was our child, and she protected us while we slept. One night, after a particularly long day, I had arrived at her house and spent the night with her, watching scary movies as we snuggled together in bed. Around midnight, we decided it was time to get ready for bed, so she went to the bathroom to brush her teeth, and I proceeded to put on my PJs. Our dog, Sadie, normally slept at the end of the bed between both of our feet. That night, however, she was curled up into my back as if wedging herself between me and something else. As soon as my girlfriend, we'll call her Amanda, got up, Sadie turned her head to the corner and proceeded to growl for prolonged periods of time. I kept telling her to knock it off and just continued getting ready to sleep, brushing it off. When Amanda entered the room again, the dog finally returned to her sleeping position and we settled in for the night. I remember waking up, but not being able to move or speak. I felt like someone was sitting on my vocal cords, causing a nauseating amount of pressure on my neck. I could see that Amanda was asleep next to me, and I tried to wake her up, but to no avail. I was scared shitless, and afraid that I would suffocate to death in the bed next to her without her ever even knowing. After what felt like an hour, I was finally able to move, and I shook Amanda to awake her, tears threatening to cascade down my cheeks. She had tears in her eyes, and I asked her what was wrong. What she said will haunt me for the rest of my life. The demon. He told me that I wasn't allowed to be happy. He said it would kill everything I loved, she told me. To this day, I think about the person she's with now and if they'll be safe. But one thing I know for sure, I'll never forget the night the demon tried to kill me. At the Pond, submitted by Unknown. I never shared this before because, really, where do you talk about something like this? Well, that and the fact that I have just been really hesitant to talk about it and make it real again after working so hard to make it a faint memory. Like a faded dream after you wake up. You know how some dreams leave the impression that doesn't fade, even when actual memories do? Things like what you did 3 Easters ago or who came to your 10th birthday party. Real memories just seem to drift into the waste bin while some bit of a dream where you're running away from your father and your legs turned into big orange flashlights stays at the front of your mind. Yeah, I know it sounds stupid, but it was real. A real recurring dream. Too dumb to make up, it's true. I'd be running, knowing that he was chasing me to kill me, and my legs would turn into these stupid, cheap orange flashlights that we used to own when I was a kid. Of course, with flashlight legs, I could hardly run. I had no knees to bend, and I would just start clomping along while he got closer and closer. Thankfully, I always woke up right before he got to me, but that crap still sits in the front of my ready recall while something nice like what I got for Christmas when I was 13 is lost to me. That was a dream anyway, but there is this real memory that I wish would drift off. I really will it to, but it won't. Maybe because no one else knows it and it doesn't want to die. Maybe if I share it, give it another home, it will leave me and let me forget. I know that's not very kind of me, passing along something terrible like this, but I figure no one is forcing you to read this, whoever you are, and maybe you can take it and forget it, like I cannot. Anyways, I think I'm stalling. I cannot believe how my heartbeat and pulse are rising just as I start thinking about writing this. I was 19 years old. 19 years and 8 months, actually. I remember because I was born in the end of March, and this was Thanksgiving. I already had an early dinner with my family. My grandmother had passed away just a couple of months earlier, so this was not a very festive time. We pretty much ate in silence and then just went our separate ways. I decided to go for a drive. I knew where there was a pond back behind the development. It was a nice grassy valley, just past some woods about half an hour drive away, so I figured I'd head there. Just stare at the water, smoke a cigar. Yeah, I know. Just what every 19-year-old does with his evenings. I was a dumb teen. I smoked cigars because no one else my age did. Stupid. Anyway, I drove back to the end of the houses, to the end of the court, which ended at some trees, and beyond which I knew there was a fairly worn footpath down a hill into the pond. I parked and started walking, biting the end off my cigar and lighting up. I knew that once I was on the trail, I was pretty much out of earshot of the houses, but still doing my best to be fairly quiet, watching my step and gently moving overhanging branches out of my way as I walked. I think the fact that I was being so quiet was the only reason I even heard her clear her throat. Just ahead, I heard the grumbled sound as I had reached the end of the path and just thought, ah, crap, someone else was actually here. I'd want some time alone, in the quiet, just to sit back and think, and I thought this place would be perfect. I'd been here before in the daytime to fish, and even then I rarely saw anyone else. Thanksgiving night seemed even less likely of a time to expect company. It was a pretty dark night. The sky was clear, but the moon was almost completely black. My eyes were adjusted to the gloom well enough to see where I was going, but to stare too far ahead, I really couldn't make out much detail. I certainly did not see anyone else down by the pond. I was sure that I was as dark to them as they were to me, so I assumed they must have seen the glowing tip of my cigar, because then I heard a voice from somewhere ahead ask, "Hey, do you have a light?" To my surprise, it was a female voice. Maybe it's sexist, but I wondered what a woman would be doing out here in the dark at such an isolated pond alone. Hearing her voice, which sounded normal enough, I was no more than mildly startled to be addressed. Sure. Sorry, where are you?" I still could not see anyone, but I was looking in the direction from which I thought I'd heard her speak. She laughed a little. "I'm right here, can't you see us?" "Us?" I thought to myself, and then asked out loud. "Well, yeah, silly, us. Just one of you." I started to sweat a little then. When she said it, her voice didn't turn evil or anything like you might imagine in a horror movie. She didn't speak you in a deep, dark voice. She just spoke it as normally, as pleasantly as she had everything else. And then I felt dumb. Of course a girl didn't come out here alone. She had some girlfriends or something. That made more sense. They were probably just all hanging out. Still, probably not a good idea for them to talk to me. What if I were some kind of psycho or something? "Sorry, I can't see you. Where are you?" I asked again, but she didn't answer. Hello?" I asked out loud, still not really freaked out, but a bit spooked. "Here," a voice whispered into my left ear. "And here," another whispered into my right. I swept my head from side to side but saw nothing. I felt someone blow into my ear, and I turned and grabbed in the dark. I caught her arm just at the elbow, and she shrieked, not in fear, but as if playing a game. "Oh, you got me! He got me!" That's when the laughter started all around me. What the hell? Couldn't tell how many voices there were, but it sounded like they all were female except for one. "Tag, you're it," he said just above a whisper, his voice coming from the path right behind me. He did not sound like he was playing a game, though. My heart went into instant overdrive. I let go of whatever girl I had just got and ran from the pond, hoping that maybe if I got away from the path and into the open, I might be better able to see them. After all, they seemed to be able to see me clearly enough, cigar or not. But that doesn't help, I thought to myself, and dropped the stupid thing. As I ran, I could feel hands from the dark slapping at my sides, not really trying to grab me, just teasing. I could make out their gray shapes, their smiles brighter in the dark, and I could hear them laugh and giggle and taunt. "Run! Run! You're it!" I remember thinking that it couldn't be real. This was the stuff of really poorly made horror movies. People did not do things like this. Knowing that it had to be a stupid prank that was probably being filmed in night vision and would end up with me being the chicken crap loser on the funny YouTube video, I stopped running and turned around. "All right then. If I'm it, then I chased you." I tried to sound brave as I said it, but I still could not see anyone very well at all, even though I could now see their basic outlines. There were at least 8 of them. And here I come. I started striding right toward the biggest looking one. The one I assumed was the man I heard behind me at the exit of the trail. He would see that I wasn't just some stupid victim. I was angry. I walked right up and swung. He did not even try to move, and I felt my fist connect with his nose. "Screw you!" I shouted, and walked the path to leave. I saw 2 very tall silhouettes there at the mouth of the path, and behind me I heard the male voice say, "Tag, I'm it." And I just lost it. I ran at the 2 tall shapes and watched them shift to stand shoulder to shoulder, but I just put down my head and charged. I felt like I'd run into a wall when I hit them, and then I felt their fists as they pounded the back of my head and neck. I curled up on the ground and just yelled, "Why are you doing this?" Cliché, I know, but trust me, if you're ever in a situation like this, I bet you'll ask the same thing. It all made no sense. There was no reason. If you're going to die, you at least want to know why. At some point they stopped with a final kick to my stomach. They hadn't beaten me too badly because I was still conscious and gasping for breath. Then I felt a kiss on my neck, a female voice asking, "What are you thankful for?" "What?" I asked. This was just wrong. You heard me. What are you thankful for? It's Thanksgiving. Won't you tell us? Or should we start first? She laughed, and I heard them all start taking turns saying all the things which they were thankful for. Rope, one girl shouted. Duct tape, said another. Sticks and stones, said one of the males. Thin skin, said one, and sad eyes, said another. Dark moons, another male voice. Dark bruises, speaking almost seductively. Pumpkin pie, shouted one of the women, and they all laughed at that. Then, right in my ear, the female who had kissed my neck whispered, victims. I knew that they were going to kill me then. The way that she said it took away any doubt. They wouldn't just beat me and leave. I still didn't know why or what I had done to provoke all of this. I felt her place a knife against my throat, and she said, Stand up, pretty please. I was sure that this was the same woman who had asked for a light. I stood up. Do you still want that light? I asked. She then laughed so hard that I could feel the knife in her hand shake against my neck as she shook with laughter. Funny, but she did have a pretty laugh. Sure, honey. Give me a light. I reached into my pocket, and before I could let myself reason through things, I pulled my hand out with my pocket knife, flicked the thumb tab, and stabbed to my right, into, I assume, was her stomach. She was so stunned, she dropped the knife at my neck. How easily could she have just slit my throat then? I ran, slashing in the air in front of me with a knife in my hand, directly at the mouth of the path. I could see it, lighter than the trees on either side. It was not currently blocked by the two men. They must have assumed that they had me already. I felt a hand grab my arm, and I slashed it twice until let go. Things happened so fast, but it felt like slow motion. I ran up the path, tripping but not falling, and made it to my car. I jumped in and started it, headlights lighting up the path in front of me, but no one followed. I drove home cursing and screaming the whole way, filled with adrenaline. I didn't go to the police. I have not told anyone, and I still don't really know why. Maybe because I stabbed someone. Actually, stabbed someone. I can still recall how that feels, and it's sickening. I threw my knife away. It was a present for my brother, but I just couldn't look at it anymore. I think that is the worst part, that I stabbed someone. That is the part that I can't get out of my mind. There was a feel and a sound to it. I just can't describe it. It was horrible. Like a fool, I did go back to the pond the next day, during the day, of course. I didn't know what to expect to see, but there was nothing. No one else was there. No pentagrams burned into the grass or abandoned abduction kits. No pools of blood that I could see. Anyway, that was the last time I went to the pond. I hope that after sharing this, I can just let this become a forgotten memory. I'm so sorry. The Man in the Screen Window, submitted by She Who Loves to Read. I'm a female, and the story I'm about to share with you happened almost 10 years ago. At the time, I was 17 years old, and like most teenagers my age, I was content to lock myself away in my room with my laptop and my headphones. In autumn of that year, my parents went up north for the weekend. We live in Michigan, and the Upper Peninsula is famous for its scenery that time of year. I was left with the house to myself for the entirety of the weekend and thought nothing of it. I enjoyed my privacy and didn't mind being alone. Let me tell you about my house and where we lived. Our house is very old and a modest dwelling, 2 floors and a basement. All the bedrooms are on the first floor, since the second floor is an unfinished attic. The house itself is about 8 miles from the nearest town. The backyard is pretty large, with an even larger cornfield stretching out for acres and acres, separating the property from the lake on the other side of the trees. The cornfield stretches partially around the house, creating a wall between our house and our neighbors to the east. It wasn't isolated by any means. There are 5 houses very near, 1 on each side and 3 across the street. A local hunter, a farmer, a retired couple, and a construction worker and the local preacher were the people I called neighbors. It's a quiet road, little traffic, and only the occasional coyote howl to disrupt the night. A nice, calm place to live. It was day 2 of my weekend alone. It was a chilly evening, so I shut my window and locked it before I held it up on my bed with my laptop. I've always been a big fan of urban legends, especially the legends that have some bit of truth woven into the tale. Truth always makes a good story better. It makes a scary story all the more frightening. That night I had no idea that I was about to take part in my own scary tale. While I was zoning out on my laptop watching horror videos and reading stories online, I heard an odd noise over my headphones. I pulled one speaker away from my ear and focused on the sound. The sound was coming from my window. The bedroom was a corner bedroom, and as a result I have 2 windows, one window facing my neighbor to the west, and the second window facing the backyard. It was at the second window that I heard the strange noise. At first I thought the leaves and the loose branches were getting blown against the screen since it was fall and the weather in Michigan can get pretty harsh and unpredictable. My reasoning didn't quite fit with the sound. It wasn't a banging or rattling, it was like metal wires snapping. I removed my headphones and used my laptop screen as light to see where I was walking without putting glare into the glass window. The curtain and the blinds beneath were drawn, preventing anything outside from being able to see inside. I was nervous. I was nervous about looking outside. I was alone, and I had no idea what was going on. I hugged my wall as I slipped my fingers under the curtains and slowly, carefully pulled down one of the blinds so I could look outside. There, standing in the darkness outside my window, was a person holding a knife, cutting at my screen. I heard my heart skip a beat as my blood ran cold. My instincts told me not to make a sound and to stay out of sight. I slid down my wall and crawled on my hands and knees to my cell sitting on the small table next to my bed. I called 911 and whispered everything to the person on the other end of the line. I told them there was someone outside my window and he had a knife and that I was alone. The operator stayed on the line with me and kept reassuring me that the police were on their way. I could hear my screen being cut open. I kept telling her I wanted to run, but she insisted I stayed put and didn't make a sound. Suddenly, the snapping sound of the screen wires being cut stopped. I listened, and I almost screamed in fear when I heard a new sound. The knife was digging at the wood frame of the window, and the man tried to pry it open from the outside. The motion light in the backyard suddenly flashed on just seconds before the red and blue lights of the arriving police car shone through my other window. I listened carefully and heard someone running from the car to the backyard. I could also hear their radio clicking on and off as he checked the area. A loud knock at the front door made me jump. I heard a man call out for me, identifying himself as a cop. Still scared, I opened my bedroom door and crept down the hall. I peeked into the living room and didn't see anything. The knocking persisted, and again the cop identified himself. I peeked through the window and front door and saw him standing there, his eyes still checking the yard. I flung open the door and almost pulled the cop inside of my house, just so happy to see someone else. He asked if I was okay and if I could give a description of the man I saw. I couldn't. He was wearing all black and had a hood pulled up which shrouded his face. All I could do was describe the large hunting knife he used to cut my screen. His partner joined him on the front porch and told us that he didn't see anyone in the area. I kept insisting on what I saw, and of course they believed me, since the patrolling cop saw the damage on the screen. The cops did a second sweep of the property and made sure every single window was secure, and that the doors were locked and the garage was secure. Before leaving, the cops told me they'd keep a patrol car in the area, but they were confident that whoever I saw wouldn't be back. They just figured that it was some teenager who was trying to break in through my window and got scared when he saw the police arrive. I thanked them and proceeded to double-check the locks for myself. I wanted to call my mom, but knew my parents were already on their way home and would be back by morning. Unable to go back to my room, I chose to sleep on the couch in the living room and tell my parents as soon as they walked in the front door. About an hour later, after I was finally able to relax and started to drift off to sleep on the couch, I heard a loud bang against my back door. I sat straight up and looked through the kitchen into the back mudroom that led to the back door. Bang! This time I knew I was in danger. I grabbed my cell and dialed 911 again. This time I ran to the kitchen and grabbed a large knife from the butcher block and huddled on the floor against the counter and cabinets. I pressed the phone to my ear as the operator, a man this time, continued to talk to me so I didn't feel alone. Bang! I gripped the knife tighter and began mentally trying to psych myself up. This man managed to get inside. Would I be able to defend myself? He had a knife. Maybe that's why I grabbed one too, but I didn't know anything about him. How tall he was, how strong he was. Did I even stand a chance? Bang! I heard the wood on the door frame crack. The old door was locked by a chain. One more hard kick could surely break the door down, and then I didn't want to think about it. I prepared for the final bang, for the door to give in and the man to attack me when I heard a voice yelling over the banging noise, "Get on the ground! Drop the knife!" Oh, thank God, I said out loud. The cops are here. The operator on the line, who had been speaking to me through the entire ordeal, continued to try to keep me calm. I listened to the cop order the man to drop the knife over and over again, but I just knew that the crazy bastard wasn't going to listen. Then another bang. But it wasn't from someone kicking the door. It was from someone firing a gun. It was silent, and time seemed to stand still. A gentle knock at the front door drew my attention. The same cop as before was once again identifying himself at the front door. I told the operator the cop was at the door, and I hung up. I opened the front door, the knife still in my hand. The cop saw it and very calmly suggested that I put it down. My hand was gripping the knife so tightly that my knuckles were white and my fingers were cramped. When I dropped the knife, the cop escorted me from the front door to his car, which was parked inside the yard. Under the motion lights of the backyard, I could see his partner standing over the body of the man in the back. I could see his knife lying on the ground just inches from his hand, and even from the distance I knew there was blood on the blade. The man himself looked like he had been dead for weeks. His hood had fallen from his face, revealing it to the night. He was white and impossibly pale. His skin was unnaturally aged with heavy wrinkles and lots of discoloration. His hair was long, stringy, and blonde. His eyes, still open, were sunken into his skull. I was taken to the police station to deliver a statement and to ensure that there were no other attackers on my property. When I told everything I knew to the interviewing cop, another cop walked into the room with a file in his hands. He whispered something to the first cop and handed him the file. I asked the cop if they knew who the man was, and he nodded. I asked to know who he was and what he wanted. The first cop didn't want to tell me, but I needed to know. I managed to coax the cop into telling me, and part of me wishes I would have just let it go. The man was a chronic junkie who abused any and all drugs he could get his hands on. He was also a violent schizophrenic with bipolar disorder. He used to live in the area until he was finally locked up in a mental hospital about 20 years prior. The act that got him locked away all those years ago was a result of him attempting to burn down a local church, declaring that he was the true Son of God, and that all religious figures, priests, ministers, etc., were false prophets and tools of Satan. The cops figured he was trying to break into my house because he thought it was where the preacher lived. He had the wrong house and would have killed me anyway if he had gotten inside. After a moment of letting this all sink in, I asked why the cops didn't see him the first time I called. His answer sent shivers up my spine, and now I'd never look at my backyard the same. He told me the man had hidden the cornfield the first time and was watching the house from between the rows. He had never left. He was always there, watching the house and waiting for the police to leave. He truly was crazy, and I'm glad he won't be around anymore.